Hello, my name is Blake Hayes. I'm the youth minister at Red Bank Church of Christ. Matt asked me to get on and bring a little message for you and your family. So I'm honored to be with you tonight, today, whenever you happen to be watching this. Um, One of the most influential people in recent history is Albert Einstein. And there's a story that Albert Einstein used to tell about um, what spurred his interest in academics and learning. And he said that when he was 5 years old, his father bought him a compass, and it was the first time he had ever seen a magnetic compass. And he was fascinated by how this needle, this tiny little machine, always pointed in one direction. He was fascinated that he anytime he tried to shake it, he tried to throw it, whatever he tried to do to it, this needle was still pointing the same direction, and it just blew his mind. And even from a young age, he was um, had this curiosity to learn what it was that controlled that needle. Like he realized that there was a power out there that was greater than this compass controlling um, where that needle points, and that curiosity stuck with him, and he wanted to find that out, and then that led to a series of um, revelations and studies that changed the world dramatically. Um, but from a young age, he realized that there was something greater at work. In John chapter 11, we have a story about Jesus and a little confrontation he has with his disciples. In John chapter 11, starting in verse 1, you hear about the death of Lazarus, and that the news of that death comes to Jesus, and he decides that he tells his disciples that they're going to go. He wants to go back to Judea, and the disciples are not on board with what he's saying. They're like, in verse 8, they're kind of saying the Jews were trying to kill you there. Like, why on earth would you want to go back? These guys don't like you. They want to kill you, and 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 they're kind of hesitant to follow Jesus, and and it can simply be read as just they didn't want to go get killed, but Jesus saw deeper into the matter. He saw that it wasn't true of every part of their lives, but right now they didn't want to follow Jesus where he was going because they saw that it could lead to danger. And Jesus' answer is so profound, and something that we can learn a lot from today. So I'll start reading in verse 5, just so we can get the story in our minds. It says, "Now Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus. So when he heard that Lazarus was ill, he stayed 2 days longer in the place where he was. Then after this, he said to the disciples, 'Let us go to Judea again.' The disciples said to him, 'Rabbi, the Jews were just now seeking to stone you, and you are going there again?' Jesus answered, 'Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble, because he sees the light of this world. But if anyone walks in the night, he stumbles, because the light is not in him.' After saying these things, he said to him, 'Our friend Lazarus has fallen asleep, but I go to awaken him.'" A lot of times throughout the Bible, the writers will point back to creation, and Jesus often does that a lot. He points back to creation, and there there are some profound stories and profound applications we can draw from the creation story, and uh, and Jesus does that here as well. But it's a little bit different when Jesus does it, because earlier in the book of John, it talks about Jesus, him being the Word, had become flesh and dwelt among us. But he says also that he was there with God in the beginning, and all things were made through him, and um, nothing was made without him. Yeah, all things were made through him, And so when Jesus points back to creation, I think it carries a lot more significance with it, uh, especially than if I talk about creation for sure. Um, but I think he's drawing a really important application from the creation. He says, "Are there not 12 hours in the day?" And of course, that's a question of them. They're like, "Yeah, of course," but what does that mean? Um, the the earth itself has no light in it, right? It's just earth. The earth is completely dependent on the sun. There was for a lot of human history, uh, people believed that the earth was the center of the universe and everything revolved around the earth. Um, and it was a dramatic discovery when people found out that that's not quite the case, that the earth and all the other planets orbit and revolve around the sun. And and uh, they didn't really know that in biblical times, but I think Jesus did, being the creator of the universe. He says, "Are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world." And regardless of what they thought about whether the earth or the sun was the center of the universe, they realized um, that that we are dependent on light, that we can't do anything without light. Um, there are areas in the on the earth that don't get light at all. If you go down into the depths of the sea, you eventually get to a point where light can't penetrate through the water anymore, so it's completely dark. And animals down there have um, bioluminescence, right? This they have the ability to create light so that they can survive in the depths of the water. Um, but we don't really have that as humans. I haven't seen any humans like the fish in Finding Nemo that has the light around his head that's dangling in front of his eyes. I haven't seen any humans like that. And it's a little different for us today because with the advancement of technology and all the wonderful things we've invented, we're not as dependent on natural light. We can create our own light. We have electricity. We have um, flashlights. We have street lights. Uh, there's not really a day where there's no, uh, or a time where there's no lights going on. So um, we've found a way to create light around us. But um, for people in this age, they were a lot more dependent on the light. They were dependent on the sun and the moon and the stars for guidance, for to be able to see, to be able to guide their walk. So it wasn't just a big ball in the sun, but it helped guide their paths and help them um, throughout their day. They were dependent on the light that came from outside. And and he says, Jesus says, if anyone walks in the day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of this world. Saying if you walk in the day, you're not going to stumble because you have light. But he says if you walk in the night, then he stumbles because the light is not in him. And I think he's making a pretty powerful statement. He's already claimed that he's the light of the world. In John, Jesus claims it that I am the light of the world. And and as he sees a little hesitation in the disciples to follow him right here, he notices that they're following their own light that they create. They think that they know what's best in this situation. Um, they don't want to follow Jesus because they they think they know what's going to happen, and Jesus says no, that's not exactly the case. Um, he says you are not can't depend on your thoughts all the time because a lot of times we aren't right. Um, but he makes a powerful statement to say that you need to follow the light, and then he reveals himself to be that light. Uh, the writer in First John talks about this as well. In First John um, chapter 7, he says, "Beloved, I'm writing to you no new commandment, but an old commandment that you've had from the beginning." And he goes on in verse 9, "Whoever says that he is in the light and hates his brother is still in darkness." So he's talking about what it means to live in the light. He says, whoever says that he's in the light but hates his brother, he lives in the darkness, because you can't hate your brother and still live in the light. But he says, whoever loves his brother abides in the light, and in him there is no cause for stumbling. But whoever hates his brother is in the darkness and walks in the darkness. He does not know where he is going, because the darkness has blinded his eyes. So it kind of contrasts somebody who's walking in the light and someone who's walking in the darkness. And notice the difference between the one who walks in the light. The one who walks in darkness hates, is full of hate, but the one who walks in the light walks in love. And that's another theme that's kind of repeated through that letter of walking in love and walking in the light. And so as we go on this week throughout our lives, may we be like Albert Einstein and realize that that I'm dependent on God to live. I can't walk through this life based on what I want to do or where I want to go, and that I continually need to look outside of me for answers. And as Christians, I think we believe that light to be Christ, to be God. So may we be able to go through our lives and look to Him for guidance, and look to Him as the source of life. And if we do that, I believe our lives will be filled with love, and that love will spread to other people as well. Thank you guys for letting me be with you for this little bit. Hope you are doing well during quarantine. Hope it ends soon so you can be back with your church family and all your friends. Thank you guys very much. Bye.